Catch all of the NFL games this season at the Albany Teletheater with the NFL Sunday Ticket from DirecTV, and enjoy the fine dining of Martell's with their special football menu, along with drink specials from Heineken. Along with the football, you can also watch and wager on all of the great fall racing at the Albany Teletheater, 711 Central Avenue. For reservations, call 438-0127.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Toner, and you're watching Capital OTV.
And that's good.
In second, these two have left. Proud Accolade, 3 back in third. Then comes Giacomo, and here comes Giacomo. Bushwhacker has been pulled up, and they run to the top of the stretch. Declan's Moon takes charge. It is Declan's Moon a length and a half in front of Wilco in second. Giacomo runs a giant race in third. Declan's Moon reaches for a final 16th. Wilco and Giacomo try to run him down. Declan's Moon with a total eclipse. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Down the Stretch. Along with my colleague Mike VIETCH, the racing columnist with the Saratogian, I'm Mark CUSANO, welcoming you to this morning's program, officially our final program of the fall season. On Hollywood Futurity Saturday, over the next 60 minutes, we will be bringing you 3 very special guests, a couple of gentlemen who hope to have a major impact on this afternoon's renewal of the Futurity, Mr. Owen Hardy, the trainer of AP Warrior, as well as Mr. NIEL Drysdale, the conditioner of the lightly raced and unbeaten Your Ten or Mine. Then we'll travel live to South Florida, where it was 70 degrees earlier this morning, and we'll be joined by Mr. Phil SERPE, the trainer of Rousing Victory, one of the starters in a highly contentious renewal of the McKnight Handicap. Along the way, we'll talk about a high-profile suspension, we'll talk about a stud fee, we'll talk about a return to the races, as well as a retirement. So all of that and much, much more if you stay with us for this, our final official show of fall. All I have to say is, if this is the type of weather we have in the fall,
this is
what do we have to look forward to?
This is getting unbearable. I mean, there's been 2 light snowstorms, a couple of weeks of reasonably decent winter weather. It's not even first of the year. Listen, are you going to get that place in Florida? Are we going to do like 3 months of remotes from Florida? I'm begging you to deliver this Christmas present.
Traipsing through the ice and snow the last couple of days. Wow.
On a work-related note, it is exciting to talk about the Hollywood Futurity today. This, folks, really, for me, at least the last 10 years, is the day when the countdown to the Derby actually starts. We're talking about a race, and I can't wait till we get to the interviews today, that really, Mark, in the last decade, has been the classic trail prep, along with the Rems, and I'd rate the Juvenile below those. And this is, to me, the last 10 years, what has happened with this race fascinates me, and it kind of falls into a pattern that I've frequently enjoyed. Are you better off waiting late and going long, or getting it done early? And at this point, I think it's this one. I don't think that's a huge trend. But this is a pretty good horse race for the
it is, without question. It is. You just saw the Open, which was last year's renewal of the Hollywood Futurity. The champ Declan's Moon wins it, and the subsequent Kentucky Derby winner runs second. But, you know, this should come as no surprise, because when you have late season 2-year-old races, such as the Hollywood Futurity and the Remsen, most of the time, those races feature horses who are not so precocious.
Oh, absolutely. No doubt.
And those are the types of Kentucky, you know, a year down the road or several months down the road, those are the types of Kentucky horses, Derby horses, that you look at, not necessarily the highly precocious 2-year-olds that made it to the Breeders' Cup. That may differ this year because I consider Stevie Wonderboy to be totally different from most other past Breeders' Cup juvenile winners who had zero realistic chance to win the Derby. But it is a very, very good race, and later on we'll chat with both Owen Hardy and NIEL Drysdale. A couple of reminders for you. If you like the opener or the early double at Aqueduct today, please remember, first post has been pushed up to 12:10. 10 minutes after 12 is first post for both today and tomorrow at Aqueduct. And a reminder that down the stretch, somewhat surprisingly, will be seen next Saturday, Christmas Eve day, at our regular time of 10 a.m. So we will see you next Saturday for our first show of winter. I can't wait to see what that holds. All right. A number of letters and emails this week. My partner's got a couple for you.
And I'm going to, while I get this, I'm going to beg you, send anything to this guy to get him a plane ticket out of here. This regarding from Kenny from Saratoga Springs and about the interview we did last week with Andy Schweigert of the American Graded Stakes Committee. As the two of you questioned Andy about the various stakes, my jaw began to drop, beginning with his Arkansas Derby defense. The old famous depth of field defense. If you have 10 or 12 fair to good horses in a race that's carded as a 1, and two or three of those horses don't display any ability which would catapult them into the Triple Crown picture or the Breeders' Cup prep picture, then this strikes me as a false status as opposed to Arkansas and the Oak Tree Mile for openers. Having large fields with so-so ability doesn't truly define depth of the field. However, stress the word by Kenny, a 6 to 8 horse field with 2 or 3 hard hitters who go on not only to make it a monster key race, but truly a depth race and should be graded accordingly. Mr. Schweigert seems to think that 10 or 12 so-so horses with warm bodies and a pulse denote depth. Now to Oak Tree, one could not ever have presented a more powerful argument from grade status than you did, meaning Mark, with Oak Tree from 99 to 05. You could not in your wildest dreams find more overpowering evidence of world-class hard hitters that cry out for grade 1 status year after year. The history of this race is above reproach, and they are always in large evidence on Breeders' Cup Day, aren't they? As always, gentlemen, thank you for your time, and especially your show. Very nice letter indeed, Kenny.
Yes, Kenny, and I have said it all along. They've got a formula to work with, but they can also step away from that formula. And I think the American Graded Stakes Committee should be embarrassed. The members of the committee should be embarrassed that the Oak Tree Breeders' Cup Mile has never been a 1.
And Mark and I would also like to thank Carol Morse for your Christmas cards today. We've enjoyed corresponding with you over the years. Carol, you're a true racing fan. Have a great, warm, Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday season.
Thank you, Carol. Merry Christmas. Now, from another Carol. Carol in Saratoga. Carol sent us a letter several weeks back asking about a specific race, the second race on Thanksgiving Day in New York. And Carol was very upset with the way she perceived the horse by the name of Don't Leave a Mark and what the assistant starters did to this horse. Well, Carol, we spoke with the starter on duty that day, Richie Broussard, and he was very, very nice. He got back to us. He reviewed the videotape on your question, and he wanted to let you know that the assistant starters use these thin leather straps, and many times they twirl those straps, and from a particular angle it may appear as though they're hitting the horse when in fact they are not. They try to use as many verbal commands as they can, and they stay away from physically doing things to the horse. This was an out-of-town horse who had to be front-loaded in the gate. The starting gate crew does a great job in New York. They keep notes on every single horse that goes to the gate. But Carol, in this case, it was an out-of-town horse. But Richie reviewed the videotapes. He said there was nothing further to the incident, and your perception of this was far worse than what actually happened. Carol, thank you for the letter. Richie, thank you so much for not only getting back to us, but for reviewing this in detail. We appreciate it. Now a couple of Michaels. Michael in Slingerlands. Thank you, Michael. And all I'm going to do is read you the end of this. Michael's sent along an article that he wrote back in 1972 about a then apprentice jockey riding at Turf Paradise. Michael obtained a job in the PR department at Turf Paradise. One of his duties was to write articles about track personalities and submit it to the Phoenix newspaper, the Arizona Republic. What's so great about this? Some 33 years ago, that 8,000 victories later, that unknown apprentice that Mike wrote about was Pat Day. Mike, thanks so much for this. We appreciate it. Now, another Mike, this one from Utica, asked us about one of the self-serve branches out in Herkimer County. Mike, we passed this along to Capital OTB Vice President John Signor, and he told us that he was going to reply personally to you. So we thank you very, very much for that. So, Michael in Utica, Michael in Slingerlands, Carol in Saratoga, the other Carol, as well as Kenny in Saratoga, we thank all of you, wish you happy holidays, one and all. And for those of you who would like to correspond with us here at Down the Stretch, here are the ways in which you can do it. Through the long, cold winter, Down the Stretch, Mark and Mike, Capital District OTB, 510 Smith, Schenectady, 12305, or electronically at viewer mail at capitalotb.com. All right, we get things kicked off this morning with a story on one of the premier trainers in the game, Mr. Todd Pletcher. The New York State Racing and Wagering Board has upheld the 45-day suspension of Todd Pletcher. The suspension stems from his tales of glory testing positive for a Class II drug, mepivacaine, on August 14th, 2004 at Saratoga. Pletcher, the leading candidate for a second straight Eclipse Award this year, may appeal in court. Partner, here's the question I have for you. How do you think this suspension to a high-quality person, a high-quality trainer, and a high-profile trainer like Todd Pletcher will be viewed, let's say, in comparison to how the suspension to Rick Dutrow was viewed?
Well, I don't think that there's much of a question that that there's a highly critical public of Dutrow, and every time his name surfaces when it comes to this, it has a much more negative connotation than does Todd's, who, as far as I know, this would be his first. I find this to be a parallel to Nick Zito of 3 or 4 years ago. I believe Neil Drysdale has one. And I don't think there was a public outcry, and I don't think there was a public outcry about Neil Howard, who had, I believe, his first earlier this year. So, you know, I think, to answer your question directly, I think the anti-Dutrow crowd will be vocal about that, as opposed to there almost isn't an anti-Pletcher crowd at this point, or the others. But it does just point out what a really treacherous time we're in right now with testing of levels and permissible levels and the classification of drugs. And you can't blame some old timers. I'm not sure that I'm one of them. I frankly think that the game might have been better off, who say, you know, look, there was a time when you just didn't run anything, and if you got caught with something, you got a suspension or a fine, and that's that. But now we've got, you know, probably a 100-page list of drugs that are used permissible from this time out and this time out. And, you know, I think this is a mistake. I think Nick's was a mistake. I think Neil Drysdale's was a mistake. And I think Neil Howard's was a mistake. But this is the era we're in.
The New York State Racing and Wagering Board also changed the Lasix rules.
They should have.
There now is a change in the minimum amount of Lasix. The minimum, which used to be 5 cc's of Lasix, and the max, as I understand it, is 10 cc's. The minimum now drops to 3 cc's of Lasix.
I could never understand why this lasted as long as it did. I know personally some veterinarians who were very upset at a 5 minimum when this started, particularly when it came to young horses, and they really weren't listened to. So what that's worth.
Here's a surprise. The stallion plans of the Preakness and Belmont Stakes Hero have been made. Here's a fleet, Alex, and certainly this is the race and the incident which which made him a household name.
Yeah.
A Fleet Alex will be standing at Gainesway Farm, and he will be standing for a first-year stud fee of $40,000. Partner, what do you think of the 40 grand?
I think it's considering the fact that he's gone to stud late. I think it's a very good number. Just a couple of things in perspective. For the new fees for 06, you've got Ghost Zapper in another universe at $200,000. Then you have older horses St. Liam and Rock Hard 10 at $50,000 each. Third on the list is the Fleet Alex at $40,000. He has, I said this before, a tremendous pedigree. He's a Mr. Prospector line stallion from a family that includes Golden Attraction, Seaside Attraction, Swain, Fantastic Light. I think the $40,000 would be $10,000 to $20,000 higher if he'd retired in September or October. This is late as far as getting the mares that you need booking for big. He'll do okay, but that's a very, very good number, Mark, 40,000. He joins Birdstone, Cuisine, Smoke Glacken, and 10 Most Wanted at the Gainesway roster. 40,000 for a Fleet Alex. I think it's going to turn out to be a bargain. I really strongly feel that way.
All right. And Wilco, the 2004 Breeders' Cup Juvenile Hero, returned to the races last Saturday at Golden Gate. Here he is in the purple cap, rallying widest of all. This is the Larkspur Stakes, and this is his first start since finishing 12th in the Preakness. Now, he's going to rally mildly here under Corey Nakatani, but watch Corey here on the outside. He's not going to punish him at all. And the reason he's not going to punish him is because as much as they wanted to win the Larkspur Stakes at Golden Gate, they would much rather win the Malibu Stakes on December 26th. Partner, this is a very interesting situation because while we know Wilco is a nice colt, he won the 2004 Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He hasn't won a race since.
Well, he's for better or for worse. He's on my small list of horses that I have an affection for. I just like Wilco, and I'm going to take it that Delassie has dealt with very serious foot problems throughout, and the decision to look after the Preakness, it's over. It's going to clean itself out naturally. Personally, I think it's going to work. I can see him not only winning the Malibu, but winning a longer distance race as an older, healthier horse. I just think he's got a lot more ability than he's almost been able to show. But that's my answer to your question. I got an intuitive feeling that this is a pretty darn good racehorse.
He had a bone chip removed from an ankle. Wilco is not the type of horse who I want to take at a short price. I don't care where.
Oh, I have short price.
Northern
I don't
California,
dispute that at
Southern
all.
Louisiana.
I think he's a good horse.
I just, he hasn't shown me enough to take at a short price. And Society Selection, shown here rallying down the center of a muddy Saratoga track, winning last year's Alabama, has been retired. A winner of 6 of 19 starts, including the Test, the Frisette, and the Chouvie. The daughter of Coronado's Quest earned just shy of $2 million for owners Irv and Marge Cowan and the legendary Alan Jerkins. She will likely go to either AP Indy or Giants Causeway. She came during the same crop as a Shadow.
Yeah.
So she was, that's not easy to do. It's like Forgo coming during the same crop as Secretariat.
When you go back and do pedigrees, and this is something I'll enjoy, down the road when you go back and look at her grade 1, and then you understand that she was in a Shadow's crop. And by the way, so much going on at Breeders' Cup, we didn't get she sneaked by a Shadow, did she not, in the distaff? She got past her old rival late in the game.
Yes.
So it's a high quality filly. I just thought, you correct me if I'm wrong, I thought a month or so ago Alan was talking about a 5-year-old campaign. There was a great period there about I'm not sure what's going to happen to her and I'm going to go. I'm not strong enough that I think that was a case, but I thought that was a case, and I was a bit surprised by the retirement. So,
another high-quality racehorse.
High-class.
It's really too bad.
Filly.
Very quickly, some news and notes. NYRA President Charlie Hayward again reiterating the New York Racing Association, if they don't get some funds, will likely declare bankruptcy by the first of the year. He's not kidding around.
Well, he's not kidding. He's been very open about it, and it's been an open secret now for about 4 months.
Congratulations to New York-based trainer Bruce Levine. He, a trainer for local owner Roddy Valente. Bruce scored career victory number 1,000 last weekend in New York. Congratulations to Bruce. And a story which broke yesterday, and this caught me off guard. Randy Schulhofer, very young, he's about, what, 44 years old, 40s, right?
Yeah.
Has decided to leave the training game. He will go into to private business, and that's a major story.
Randy is very confident about this. He knows that he made the right move for himself and his family. We have spoken about it. I'm very happy for him, and as he said, lots of times trainers don't get an opportunity like this if they're leaving their profession, and we wish him well, and there's a chance he'll be located to Albany, which means we'll get to see him next year at Saratoga. One
of my equine girlfriends, a Ouija board, was victorious against the males in the Hong Kong Vase last weekend, won it very impressively, and the good news is they may keep her in training as a 5-year-old because, as I mentioned several months ago on this show, there are a couple of grass races in Dubai in March that are worth
They got bumped up, didn't they?
million. So she is a nice one. And her regular rider, Kieran Fallon, will likely come to Southern California this winter to do some riding at Santa Anita. And finally, 136 early bird nominations for the Florida Derby. That race being run on April Fool's Day. Got to be something ironic about that. Leading the trainer list, Todd Pletcher has 17 of the 136 early nominees to the Florida Derby. And we are up to our first break on this morning's mid-December edition of Down the Stretch. Thank you so much for joining us. When Michael and I return, we will welcome in our first two guests this morning, Mr. NIEL Drysdale and Mr. Owen Hardy, both of whom have major contenders in this afternoon's Hollywood Futurity. As we get our Hollywood Futurity segment kicked off, going to the break, we'll turn the clocks back to the year 2000. In this year's renewal of the Hollywood Futurity, it featured a future dual classic winner. It featured a future 3-year-old champion who was not only a 3-year-old champion, he was unanimous as a 3-year-old champion, and he was Horse of the Year. But what the 2000 Hollywood Futurity didn't feature was a deep field. I don't know how the American Graded Stakes Committee would react to this. So
Andy,
we'll take a look at the 2000 Hollywood Futurity going to the break. Michael and I will be back with much more right after these messages.
And there they go. And there goes Bank Street going directly to the front with Golden Ticket chasing after in second, and Millennium Wind. Little speed early on to keep position at the rail, and Millennium Wind goes right up to the front with Golden Ticket. And those two now throw 2 lengths on Bank Street, who's back into third. And Point Given is racing along in fourth, about 6 lengths from the front as they go past the 7/8 mile marker. And it's Millennium Wind, and he's tugging hard. He leads it by a half a length from Golden Ticket to the outside in second. Bank Street remains in third, and he's now 4 from the front. Then it's a gap of 3 back to Point Given, and Point Given trails by 5 as he inches closer to the leader, and it's Millennium Wind. He's still in front by a half from Golden Ticket, but Point Given has now worked his way up to third. He's only a length and a half from the pace, and Point Given is pulling along, and now Gary Stevens has him right where he wants him. He is third, just a length off the pace, and now Bank Street is last. Down the backstretch, Millennium Wind, a short lead from Golden Ticket, who's right there to keep him honest. And now to the outside, Point Given stacks up 3 across the track inside the half-mile pole. Bank Street is now 4th and last as they go for the far turn. Golden Ticket, Millennium Wind, they're stride for stride with 3 furlongs to go. Point Given just to the outside, waiting to pounce on that pair. Then it's a gap of 3 lengths for the back to Bank Street, and Golden Ticket now gets ahead in front. Millennium Wind is still there along the inside, and Point Given to the outside, right alongside. These 3 come from home together in the Grade 1 Hollywood Futurity. Millennium Wind is now just in front. Point Given to the outside, and now Golden Ticket has slipped back third. Millennium Wind and Point Given goes right up to him. These 2 a furlong to go. Point Given gets a neck in front. Millennium Wind trying to fight him off, but it's Point Given now a half a length. Millennium Wind settles for second, and it's Point Given. The trailhead of the Kentucky Derby is here, and Point Given is at the head of the trail.
Hello, this is Jim Bond. You're watching Down the Stretch on the Off-Track Betting Network.
Hello, this is Jim Bond. You're watching Down the Stretch on the Off-Track Betting Network. Hello, this is Jim Bond. You're watching Down the Stretch on the Off-Track Betting Network. Hello, this is Jim Bond. You're watching Down the Stretch on the Off-Track Betting Network. Hello, this is Jim Bond. You're watching Down the Stretch on the Off-Track Betting Network.
If you're remodeling any portion of your house, you can't afford to miss this information. It's the information retailers don't want you to see.
Our whole entire house of cabinetry was going to come to a little over $60,000. Direct Buy came back with $38,000, so the savings is almost too good to be true.
One of the estimates that we had gotten was $10,000 to redo this small bathroom. It ended up costing us, with everything, including labor, under $3,000.
Just on our kitchen alone, we saved almost $10,000.
It adds up to about a $30,000 to $40,000 savings overall.
Call the number on your screen now to receive your free insider's guide to buying direct. Plus, you'll also receive a free visitor's pass for an exclusive tour of your local Direct Buy showroom. Call the number on your screen right now to get started buying the Direct Buy way. Stop paying retail and become part of Direct Buy, the private, members-only showroom and design center. Don't wait another minute. Pick up the phone and call now.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike Veach to my left. I'm Mark CUSANO. We hope you enjoyed looking back at point given in the 2000 Hollywood Futurity. It just goes to show how tremendously difficult it is to win a Triple Crown when that horse couldn't win one.
He was no pun
splendid.
intended, a good point. He was, of the last 2 or 3 that we've had, he was the one that I thought physically could just tear him up for 3 races and race the following week. So you're right. It's just there's an awful lot of luck involved in this game.
That was the 2000 edition of the Hollywood Futurity. This afternoon, the 25th renewal of the Hollywood Futurity would occur. And our first guest this morning, the understated NIEL DRYSDALE. You know, you'd never know what you're going to get from him. NIEL,
well,
you know.
Can't wait to hear it.
I mean, you know, he's had some of the most wonderful horses, and, you know, you just can't get NIEL too terribly excited. What does he think his chances are with Your Ten or Mine this afternoon? Well, on Thursday, during training hours, I caught up with the trainer of Your Ten or Mine, Mr. NIEL DRYSDALE. NIEL, Your Ten or Mine broke his maiden in his debut early September at Del Mar. Talk to our audience about what he was like training up to his first start, what you saw, and talk about that initial victory sprinting down at Del Mar.
Well, he's a very straightforward horse. He's quite relaxed about everything. So we felt that he might be able to win first time out because he'd shown quite a bit of talent in the mornings. And then after that, we tried to get a race for him at Oak Tree, you know, prior to the preview. And at that time, most of the young horses in Southern California were sick. A little sort of bug went through the stable area, so consequently the race didn't fill. And we kept trying, but it didn't go. So we wound up having to run him in the preview without a prep. Fortunately, because he's so relaxed about everything, he does already act like a seasoned horse.
NIEL, let's talk about the preview, and Your Ten or Mine will be number 3 in here. NIEL, it appeared to me that he got an awfully good education in this race. He sat in behind horses going down the backstretch, split rivals on the turn, and then drew off to a 2.5 length victory. Was that setup, was that style of running planned in advance?
Yes, it was. I mean, basically, Patrick Valenzuela rode the horse in a similar fashion in Del Mar, and he was able to learn a lot from that experience. So in the paddock, we just said to Patrick, just ride him the same way you did Del Mar, and which he did. He schooled him, had him in behind horses, came through between horses, and so it was a good, another good educational experience for him.
NIEL, what did Patrick have to say to you following the preview?
I think he just had a big smile on his face.
NIEL, is it fair to say, well, since he missed the prep for the Hollywood preview, was Your Ten or Mine at his very best for that race?
Well, young horses always like to see them improving and developing. So, you know, hopefully he'll continue to improve and develop. just keep our fingers crossed.
How's he been working since the preview? How's he coming up to Saturday's Hollywood Futurity?
Well, he's very healthy horse, and he we haven't been doing much fast work with him because don't feel he needs it. He's fit. You know, he ran the other day, and so he's just been doing some quite leisurely works in hand, and just keeping him happy and keeping him ticking over.
Neil, there's always a question with babies, first time stretching out, first time going 2 turns. Your thoughts on him going 8.5 furlongs in his first start around 2 turns?
Well, I think that his style of racing is conducive to going around 2 turns because, as I keep repeating, he's quite relaxed in his attitude. So from that point of view, and I think that probably Forest Camp, probably he didn't really have the chance to stretch on out. I mean, he's known more of a 7 furlong horse, but it was probably circumstantial that he wasn't able to show that he could run further. I mean, he's by deputy minister, and as you know, he's sired horses to win the Belmont. So we'll see how we do.
Neil, assuming that your tenor mine stays on track, remains healthy, and races well on Saturday, do you have tentative plans for his winter-spring campaign?
No, I don't.
Nothing?
I'm just trying to get through this race now, and then we'll see how he measures up against these colts before we start to plan anything.
Neil, realistically, this is an awfully solid field for this renewal of the Hollywood Futurity. Realistically, what do you expect from your tenor mine on Saturday?
Well, I'd like him to hit the board, you know. I think, you know, if he'll be in the mix, hopefully he'll be in the mix.
Neil, before I let you go, I want to talk to you about a colt who caught my eye when he was a very, very impressive maiden winner a while back, and that's Fusaichi Samurai. Neil, he's been on the sidelines, but I see he's back working. Give us an update on Fusaichi Samurai.
He's coming along well. You know, he's filled out finally and developed, and he seems to be over his little ailments. He'll be ready to run at the beginning of the year.
Neil, I must admit I was very pleasantly surprised to see him back because, you know, I think we're kind of in an era of early retirements, and I was thrilled to see him back. Neil, the reasons for bringing him back, and is there a main goal for him?
No, we just, you know, we need to get him going, you know, prove that he's a good horse, and go from there.
Neil, is he a good horse?
Time will tell.
All right. Neil, thank you so much. As
okay,
always,
Mark.
we appreciate it.
Anytime. All right.
Neil Drysdale, ladies and gentlemen, the trainer of your tenor mine, one of the major participants in Saturday's Hollywood Futurity. It's always interesting with Neil.
Well, he tells you as much as the horse wants to tell you.
Yep, we'll take it one race. He hopes to hit the board this afternoon. It's a competitive race this afternoon.
Very good race.
And one of the other gentlemen represented in this afternoon's race is Mr. Owen Hardy, who has AP Warrior, who cost a cool $1.3 million.
He sure
is this
did.
pedigree that good?
This pedigree,
the warrant, $1.3 million?
This pedigree is that good.
Okay.
It really is that good.
Well, AP Warrior second in the Norfolk. Owen gave him some time, came back and was a very impressive allowance winner in his last. And on Thursday, Michael had a chance to sit down and chat with Mr. Owen Hardy.
Owen, AP Warrior, an expensive yearling. I wanted to ask you to open our discussion. How did he take to his early training as you prepared him for his first race?
You know, he did everything right from day one. I never had any trouble at all with him. He was always seemed pretty precocious, and his gait works prior to his first start was very sharp. So, I figured he was a pretty decent horse early on.
So even with what is really a marvelous pedigree to go long, he wanted 5.5 first out, so you weren't terribly surprised.
No, not necessarily. I was kind of surprised that he won in the fashion he did. I hadn't been overly hard on him prior to his first start, and he'd shown plenty of speed, so I figured he'd run credibly. But the fact that he won in the fashion he won in kind of surprised me.
Well, Owen, you had, after your maiden, you had an unpleasant experience at Del Mar with him, and I want to ask a couple questions about that. We watched him in the Del Mar Futurity. We, from 3,000 miles away, knew that wasn't the AP Warrior that you had trained to the race, and subsequently we've learned about problems on the way to the post. And my specific question, Owen, is, was the trouble with the tunnel or was the trouble with the handling on the way to the post?
In the Del Mar Futurity,
yes,
the trouble was, I really didn't have any trouble. I'd taken him down there for 10 days prior to the race, and I'd schooled him in the tunnel after his disaster in the Best Pal Stakes. And the trouble seemed to be, when you came out of the tunnel, he didn't necessarily want to go to the left. He wanted to go to the right. When you turn him to the left with the pony, he'd duck away and get away from the pony. So in order to eliminate that factor, I just decided, all right, well, listen, just as soon as you get out of the tunnel, just take him to the right and go off to the right, and that way, he's not going to do anything, he's not going to get loose, he's not going to get hurt, people who have bet on him aren't going to lose their money, and the owner is going to get to see his horse run instead of watching him run loose around the backstride. And it was, I thought it was a pretty common sense decision. I ran it by the stewards, and they were adamant that I had to take part in the post parade, and they said, try and take him to the left. If he does anything, then all right, go ahead and take him to the right. But my contention was that if I took him to the left and something happened, it was going to be too late. So anyway, I took him to the right, and they sent the outrider after me and told me I had to come back and complete the post parade with everybody else, otherwise I was going to be scratched.
Jeez.
But that wasn't necessarily, that had no bearing on the outcome of the race. The problem in the Del Mar Futurity was he broke sharply, and Patrick just sent him to the lead, and he went way too fast, way too early, and he had nothing left for the stretch. The instructions in the paddock prior to the race were, take a hold of the horse, let the speed go. He likes to sit in behind horses, and he has a very good turn of foot, which nobody ever got to see in the Del Mar Futurity. So basically, the post parade had no bearing on the outcome of the race. The race was won and lost in the first half mile.
Owen, the Norfolk was a much, much better effort. You got him settled. It was his first race around 2 turns. Were you always waiting for the chance to go 2 turns and go along with this fellow?
Yeah, his style of running and his style of training always suggested that 2 turns, plus his pedigree.
Oh, yes.
The quiet American there suggested that the further he went, the better he was going to be.
Owen, despite a good effort, you decided to not go to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Explain that decision, if you will.
Well, the decision was all basically decided, it was all made by Mr. Fulton, who owns the horse. He only wanted to go if he felt the horse could win. He was coming off a second place finish. His buyer numbers weren't really very good. His rag numbers weren't very good, and Mr. Fulton felt that it didn't justify taking him to New York to run against the best when there was still some question about the horse's ability. And, it was a wise decision. As a trainer, you always want to run in the Breeders' Cup. You want to run in the big races, but sometimes it takes the hand and the voice of reason to put a choke chain on you.
That's good to hear, actually. So.
Well, I'm not speaking for all trainers. I'm certainly speaking for myself. So.
Righto. Owen, his mile allowance win at Santa Anita was really, really lovely. Talk about his style that race and his performance that day.
Well, he did that day what I wanted to do in the Del Mar Futurity. I wanted to take him back off the pace, give him something to run at. He really relaxes once he gets in behind horses, and he broke sharply in the allowance race. And Patrick found himself on the lead, and then he really had to strangle the horse to get him back. And once he did get him back, the horse just dropped the bit and really just waited kindly in behind the leader until Patrick asked him to go. And then once he did ask him to go, the horse showed the turn of foot that I always believed he had, and he drew off, convincingly. He did beat Bob and John in that race, and he's got to face Bob and John again in the Futurity on Saturday. However, Bob and John had got sick prior to that race. He was meant to run in the Norfolk, and he didn't make it because he was sick. So I think, I think we probably faced Bob and John on not necessarily his best day, but I'm pretty sure we will see the best Bob and John show up on Saturday.
Well, speaking of that race, of course, we're talking about the Grade 1 Hollywood Futurity, a very, very important race for 2-year-olds. Owen, you've had a month and a half here since that race. How is AP Warrior coming up to the Futurity?
He is in top condition. If he gets beat, he's going to get outrun, but he won't be short of work. He's, I believe he's on top of his game. And, everything being equal and the horse gets a clean trip, he should win this race.
Owen, the Hollywood Futurity has been a very, very important, I think it's fair to say in the last 10 years, a very serious predictor of classic form the next year. So I'd like to ask you, if you do well in the Hollywood Futurity, do you have any tentative plans for winter, spring? Are you thinking to stay in California or perhaps to come east?
I would say I would stay in California. Mr. Fulton likes to race out here. We have the weather out here, and if everything goes according to plan, I'm sure I would do my prepping in California.
Well, Owen, we at Down the Stretch really appreciate our visit with you again today. We wish you all the best in the Grade 1 Hollywood Futurity.
All right, guys, keep your fingers crossed for me, and please God, we'll talk soon.
Most certainly. Ladies and gentlemen, trainer Owen Hardy with AP Warrior, a blossoming young star in California as we conclude the important races of the 2-year-old season.
Isn't it interesting that Stan Fulton, the owner of AP Warrior, paid $1.3 million for him, and then come Breeders' Cup time when a decision had to be made, said to his trainer, I don't think we're ready to go. How about that?
I gave you a stronger, more than interesting, it's unusual in this day and age, and it really is quite a thing that I think will benefit the horse. So
let's take a look at the field for this afternoon's 25th renewal of the $400,000 Hollywood Futurity. Now, partner, there's 8 of them in here. 3 of them are maidens. Now, one of them is a good maiden. That's number 7, Jealous Prophet. He stakes placed. But somebody's going to have to tell me what the heck Bo Greeley is doing. He's got 2 maidens in here, Kobayashi, number 3, and a Crew Egret, number 6, who absolutely do not belong. But your thoughts on the Hollywood Futurity?
Well, actually, the number 3 is in my mind, but not quite in the same vein. I see 3, Bob and John, Your Tender Mine, and AP Warrior. And my thoughts on the race are this. There's a study in contrast here with NIEL DRYSDALE, who simply will not work Your Tender Mine fast at all. And folks, in my experience, this trainer is telling you this horse has a world of speed and he doesn't have to find it in the morning. And I think that is just the way NIEL is. A little trouble by front bandages might be something that he always does. By contrast, the outside horse, who I'm going to bet today, I think the AP Warrior is the horse best suited in this field to go on to the Classics. The post may hurt him a little bit. He is bred to go all the way. I think he's showing the perfect improvement pattern, but he may get beat today by a more precocious Your Tender Mine. But I think he's the best one in the race, so I'm going to play him. And interestingly, the contrast as Owen has really asked him for speed in the morning as opposed to. So I think it's a terrific renewal of the Hollywood Futurity. Can't wait to watch it this afternoon. What are you feeling about it?
You know, first of all, we don't know if all these horses are going to remain. And
that is a very good point.
I think in the case of AP Warrior, you want a couple of scratches because I don't like that post position at all.
Yes.
It's a short run to the first turn. I'll tell you what, folks, I'm not even certain who the favorite's going to be. I mean, it could be Bob and John. It could be Your Tender Mine. It could be AP War. I don't know who the favorite is going to be in here, but I don't like the outside post. I do not like post 8 with a short run to the first turn. Garrett Gomez is going to have to use him early. And the thing is,
I think so,
Owen Hardy doesn't want him used early.
Yes,
he wants him to settle.
With that.
So I think the post position, unless there's a bunch of scratches, could hurt him. So I think the race in my mind is Your Tender Mine and Bob and John. And again, you're going to have to look for some value because I can't even tell you who's going to be favored. And you know what? Brother Derek's a decent 2-year-old. And he's going to be a square price. Might be a half a step slower than these. But to me, the race, Bob and John, Your Tender Mine, in this afternoon's 25th renewal of the Hollywood Futurity. We are up to our final break on this morning's mid-December edition of Down the Stretch. Thank you so much for having joined us. When Michael and I return, we will travel via telephone to South Florida and welcome in Mr. Phil SERPE, who has rousing victory in this afternoon's highly contentious renewal of the McKnight. As we go to this break last Saturday in New York, the Queens County. One of our guests on last week's show, Mr. Shug McGahee, was a sending out philanthropist making his stakes debut. So we'll take a look at the Queens County going to the break. Michael and I will be back with Phil SERPE right after these messages.
Hey. And their off evening attire was off to a hesitant start and spots the field 3 or 4 lengths. So a bad beginning for the old veteran as they move by us for the first time, and it is Philanthropist who will match strides early on here with Trapped Again. West Virginia's on the outside, rating back in 3rd. Then We Can Seek, and Evening Attire spotted him about 5 lengths and trails the field as they move into the first turn. Philanthropist gets an opening quarter in 24 seconds flat. Now gallops away to a 3-length lead. Trapped Again continues to sit back in 2nd. West Virginia's on the outside 3rd. We Can Seek rating in 4th, 4 lengths back. And Jose Santos still unhurried with Evening Attire. Indeed has a good hold of him as they begin that run down the backstretch. The opening quarter went in 24 flat. The second quarter went in 24 and 4. So a little breather there for the front runners. Here's Philanthropist now joined on the lead by Trapped Again. Then West Virginia, Norberto Arroyo steals a peek back to check out the competition. You'll see that Evening Attire is right up with the leaders now. And on the inside, We Can Seek. There's less than a half mile to go, and there's 3 lengths from front to back. Philanthropist Trapped Again, 1-2. West Virginia now sent up after them on the outside 3rd. We Can Seek and Evening Attire, 3 furlongs to go. Philanthropist holds that narrow lead. Trapped Again ratcheting up the pressure. West Virginia looms on the outside. Evening Attire hitting his best stride, but it'll be forced wide into the stretch. A huge opening at the rail for We Can Seek. Stacked across the track, and it's wide open coming into the last furlong. We Can Seek rides the rail to a short lead. West Virginia's right there. Evening Attire on the far outside. Philanthropist fights on, and it's West Virginia in front. Philanthropist doing his best, but he's a half length behind with 100 yards to go. Philanthropist nip and tuck now with West Virginia. Philanthropist comes back. Oh, what a game winner was Philanthropist today.
Hi, I'm Rick Violet, and in my office we always have on Capital OTB TV.
A safety warning has been issued on Guidant medical devices that have been implanted from the mid-1990s to present, including Guidance defibrillator, Guidance pacemaker, and Guidance Ancure stent grafts. Guidant Corporation has recalled 11 cardiac defibrillator models that have been implanted in thousands of patients. The Ancure stent graft device that is used to repair abdominal aortic aneurysms has been recalled. In addition, there has been a safety warning issued on 9 pacemaker models due to malfunctions that could lead to serious health complications or even death. If you or a loved one have a Guidant cardiac defibrillator or a pacemaker and think you may be at risk or have had AAA surgery and suffered serious injury or death,
call attorney James Rollhouse and Associates toll-free at 800-793-6562 for a free case evaluation. That's 800-793-6562. Time restrictions may apply, so call now. 800-793-6562.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike Veach to my left. I'm Mark CUSANO. You just watched the Queens County and Philanthropist for Shug McGahee and Barcoa by a game neck over West Virginia. I said to my partner off camera, I thought the key there, and if you've got the video of this race, take a look at it in the middle of the stretch. Barcoa switched the stick from his right hand to his left hand, hit him 2 or 3 times left-handed, and Philanthropist really responded. All right, our final guest this morning. Some of you may recall that the only horse on my winter watch list so far is Rousing Victory. Well, he starts later on this afternoon in a highly contentious renewal of the McKnight. And joining us this morning, live from sunny and warm South Florida is his trainer, Mr. Phil SERPE. Phil, welcome back to Down the Stretch.
Thank you.
Good morning, Phil.
Phil, Rousing Victory has shipped from the cooler climes here in the north to South Florida. How has he acclimated? Phil, how's he doing coming up to this afternoon's McKnight?
Well, when he first got down here to Florida, he wasn't real keen on the warmer weather, but he's acclimated just fine since then. So he seems to be quite a bit on the muscle this morning, which is always a good sign with him. So I think he's going to give us a good race today.
That's wonderful. Phil, he had a half-mile breeze, I believe, on Wednesday at Palm Meadows. Just a nice, easy half-mile over the grass course there. Did it go how you wanted? Is he fit enough for this afternoon's McKnight?
Yes, we believe he's fit enough. I mean, the horses had, let's see, a start at 1 mile and 5/8, a start at 1.5 miles this year, and started at 1 mile and 3/8, 2 starts at 1 mile and 3/8. So the work actually was a longer, slower work. We actually had broke him off as he went through the turn going into the 5/8 pole. So he finished very well. He got his last quarter in about 24 flat. And, I think the horse is ready to get over there and make a good show for himself.
Phil, in a moment, our audience is going to take a look at his most recent effort in the Red Smith. And as we pick it up, he'll be 5th going down the backstretch, but 3 wide. And in his last 2 starts, Phil, including the Red Smith, he hasn't been anywhere near the hedge. Talk about his last couple of efforts, and in particular, the Red Smith.
Well, really, the Red Smith, he's been wide actually in his last 3 starts. And really, the Red Smith, though, he never got anywhere inside near the rail. I mean, he really was parked way outside for the entire race. Fortunately, today we drew the rail. We've got Edgar Prado, who loves to ride his horses along the rail and save ground. And, I think that's going to benefit us a lot. There's some speed, obviously, in the race with Franklin Tower, Wild Buddy, Revved Up. Those kind of horses, I think, will set an honest pace. And I think Edgar can save some ground and finish strong with him.
Phil, talk to our audience. I think a lot of people overlook, to some degree, the importance of saving ground, particularly in 3-turn grass races. How important is it to you as a trainer to have your horse save some ground?
I think it's very important, again, obviously depending on the pace factor in the race, but I mean, when you start getting races, over 1 mile, 1 mile and 1/16, I mean, you just can't be hung out that wide. Because your horse is really just giving up too much ground to the other horses. I think particularly in the Red Smith in his last start, those were the circumstances. And although obviously with the highest regard to King's Drama, we were really kind of hung out there. And, he beat us like 2.5 lengths. And I think it would have been a much stronger finish on our horse if we were able to save a little ground.
Phil, you lose your regular rider, Javier Castellano, to Meteor Storm. You get an awfully nice replacement in Edgar Prado. But, Phil, any quirks, any idiosyncrasies to riding Rousing Victory?
No, not really. I mean, the only thing you got to watch with Rousing Victory is when you call on them. These horses that run at these longer distance, sometimes you think, they're kind of plotters. And the thing about Rousing Victory is when you call on him, he's going to give it to you. So you don't really want to call on him too soon. I think, obviously, having Edgar on the horse is a big plus. I mean, there's no better grass rider in the country. I think Javier Castellano did a great job with the horse in the past. But I think we're in good shape here.
Phil, Rousing Victory has been very consistent with the exception of the Man of War, where he was 8th, beaten 18 lengths. Phil, was there any legitimate excuse for him in that race?
Yes, actually there was, and it seems to be every time you pick up a racing form, some trainer's horse has got a bruised foot or a lung infection. But the truth of the matter is we had a respiratory issue with the horse. It required to be on some antibiotics for well over a week. that was kind of the reason that we brought the horse back at a shorter distance after that race in the Knickerbocker to kind of use that as a stepping stone into the Red Smith. So he had a legitimate excuse. He didn't run his race that day. You can see when you pick up his page that he never runs a bad race. So obviously there was an excuse for the man of war.
All right, Phil, I'm going to send you over to my partner, Mike Veitch, for a couple of questions.
Okay.
Mike.
Phil, good morning, and thanks for joining us. Just 2 questions, Phil. Other than last summer during his 3-year-old season when you had him on dirt in the transferred race at 7 furlongs, he's been grass all the way. Did you ever consider dirt racing for this guy?
Well, you know, we he's bred for grass. We ran him on the dirt in the race that came off the turf at Saratoga back last summer as a 3-year-old. I mean, he ran a productive race, but this horse is, pedigree-wise, it's turf stamped all over him. So, there's no reason for us to go in any other direction with him.
And Phil, my other question is, after the realization last year, you gave him a good, very long layoff all the way into summer at at Saratoga, pardon me. Any particular reason for a layoff that long?
Yeah, that actually wasn't part of that was by design, and part of it wasn't by design, unfortunately. After the Lawrence realization, we just decided just to give him a little downtime. Turf season was pretty much coming to a close. Rain was coming into New York. We were bringing him back early last winter at the Palm Meadows training facility where he is right now. And unfortunately, he popped a curb, which is sort of an inflammation of a ligament on the hind leg below the hock. And these things are by no means career-ending or going to hinder a horse in his future races, but they are time-consuming. It means cooling the thing down and performing a process on it, which can take anywhere, from 6 to 8 weeks, and then bringing the horse back. So part of that time off was by design, and part of it was not.
Okay, Phil, thank you. Here's Mark.
Phil, finally, how is the weather in South Florida this morning, and what are you expecting for turf conditions later on?
Weather in South Florida is good. It's in the 70s right now. It's a little bit humid out. I think he'll deal with that okay. He dealt with that weather up in Saratoga. The turf, unfortunately, it's December. Calder has been racing on their grass course since, I guess, very late April, and I'm sure it's a little churned up over there. But Rousing Victory's a tough horse. He's a very tough horse, so I think he'll get across it okay for us.
Well, Phil, I want to wish you all the best this afternoon. Let's have Edgar sit chilly and save some ground and wish for the best. Want to thank you so much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. And have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday to you and your family, and we hope to be speaking with you again very soon.
Thanks very much, and Happy Holidays to everybody.
Thank you, Phil. Phil Serpe, ladies and gentlemen, the trainer of Rousing Victory. And I'll tell you what, this race came up wonderfully. Let's take a look at the field. In fact, here's the first half of the field for this afternoon's McKnight. Rousing Victory, 8-1 in the line. Really will probably be somewhere in the vicinity of 6 to 8 to 1, depending on any late scratches that we get. I mean, to give you an idea how good this field is, there's a Request for Parole, who's a graded stakes winner and grade 1 stakes placed, who's 20 to 1 in here. DeMeteor comes off a very, very good race in South Florida, and Dreadnought is the defending champion in this race, and he's 10 to 1. The horse that you don't see on this page, let's see if we see him on the next page, may be the betting favorite. As we take a look at the second part of the field, number 8, Revved Up. And he's not on there, but Revved Up is going to either be the favorite or the second choice. It's Chris Clement. I mean, going 1.5 miles on grass, that says quite a bit. Revved Up hasn't run a bad race all year. He comes off a very, very good race going 9 furlongs, now stretches out. The other horse who I think will vie for favoritism is Meteor Storm, who's been running in grade 1 company throughout the year. Now he's 0 for 8 this year, but he gets a bit of class relief. Javier Castellano leaves Rousing Victory to go to Meteor Storm. He could be tough this afternoon. Silverfoot comes out of the Breeders' Cup turf. Dreadnought is on his game. This is a very deep and very contentious renewal of the McKnight. But I've got Rousing Victory on my watch list. He draws the inside post, which can be critical, going a 3-turn route. And I think if Edgar can sit a ground-saving, clean trip, he's got to beat Revved Up and Meteor Storm. But I think Rousing Victory has got a wonderful chance at a very square price, and he is my selection in this afternoon's McKnight. Partner, who do you like?
Well, in a race that has really come up aces for a late-season grass race, I mean, this is just an outstanding affair. But I'm sort of stuck on the outside again, Mark. I think the class release for Meteor Storm is going to matter. I think dropping 8 pounds is going to matter. And I think just about any horse who ran as good as he did on what was truly a swamp in the Canadian International is ready to go. I was surprised and impressed that he's decided to cross country to come for this race. I'll admit once again, post 11 isn't the best, but that's who I'm going to take to win the race.
All right, there's a look at the McKnight. A couple of things here before we leave you. Just want to remind you that next week at the Albany Teletheater, there will be a handicapping contest the 2 days before Christmas on Friday the 23rd and Saturday the 24th. There'll be some non-winning ticket drawings, and you see some of the prizes available. So if you've got your Christmas shopping done and you'd like to participate in a handicapping contest next Friday and Saturday at the Albany Teletheater. And a reminder, we will be back with you next Saturday at our regular time of 10. Quite a few letters and emails this week. And for those of you who would like to correspond with us, if you've got a question, a comment, a suggestion, here are the ways in which you can reach us: through the United States Postal Service down the stretch, Mark and Mike, Capital District OTB, 510 Smith, Schenectady, 12305, or electronically at viewermail@capitalotb.com. Time to thank all the folks who got this week's show on the air. And doing yeoman's duty, Pat Peretta, directed this morning, Dan Hayes and Pete Persico. A gentleman who has never worked on the show before, worked on audio this morning. Thank you to Kirk Flick. Thanks to our associate producer, Julie Hoxie, and special thanks to this morning's guests, Mr. Neil Drysdale, Mr. Owen Hardy, those gentlemen involved in this afternoon's Hollywood Futurity, and to Mr. Phil Serpe, who will send out Rousing Victory in the McKnight. Partner, have a good weekend.
You too.
Enjoy this final weekend of fall.
4 more months of this.
4 more months of this. Why don't you convince my wife to take me to Florida?
I thought what I heard last week, she was trying to convince you to become a cross-country skier or something like that.
Yeah, that's gonna
Is
work.
She still living with you?
Yeah. That's gonna go over just about as well as your thought of taking me to Canada. So have a good weekend.
I give up.
And we'll see you next Saturday.
Absolutely.
Folks, thanks so much for having joined us this morning. As always, we appreciate it. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy some very good racing at both Hollywood Park
a good day of racing,
as well as South Florida. And remember, first post at Aqueduct coming up at 12:10. So have a great weekend and a terrific upcoming week. And Michael and I will see you next week.